Good evening, welcome, and thank you for joining us for this panel discussion. My name is Yue Wu, Community Planner at Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, or PCDC for short. This event is hosted by PCDC in partnership with Metro Chinese Weekly and Philly Guide. Here's today's agenda. First, I will spend a little time to provide some context for today's discussion. After that, we are honored to have Councilman Squilla to deliver the keynote speech, and then we will ask you to share with us what you would like to learn more about from today's conversation. Following that, we will have about 1 hour of panel discussion and 14 minutes Q&A. For those who are not familiar with PCDC, we are established in 1966 as a grassroots nonprofit community-based organization. Our mission is to preserve, protect, and promote Chinatown as a viable ethnic, residential, and business community. We provide a wide range of services for Chinatown and Chinese immigrant community in Philadelphia, including housing counseling, neighborhood planning and advocacy, affordable housing development, commercial corridor, youth program, etc. In early 2019, PCDC began collaborating with PolicyLink to develop a community-driven equitable development strategy, Chinatown Future Histories, Public Space and Equitable Development. The purpose was to resist increasing gentrification and displacement pressure facing Chinatown. Through community meeting and dinners, we engaged Chinatown community members to learn about their priorities and discuss what they believe is equitable development. We also hosted a one-day equity lab, which was a gathering of community stakeholders, policy experts, and decision makers with an explicit goal of working out solutions around residential, commercial, and cultural gentrification. Today's panel discussion is the continuance of the conversation about equity, which started last year. Before the panel discussion, it is important for us to understand what equity is. The definition of equity is offered by PolicyLink: just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. In neighborhood development, we need to figure out how the change to the neighborhood will impact low-income people, people of color, and immigrants. To evaluate whether something is equitable, you have to ask yourself 3 questions: who benefits, who pays, and who decides. Take Vine Street Expressway as an example. Due to the construction of Vine Street Expressway in late 20th century, Chinatown lost 25% of its land, and the expressway is still a physical and psychological barrier in the neighborhood until today. In this case, let's ask the 3 questions. Who benefits? People who benefit most are those who live outside of the city and rely on cars to commute. Who pays? The government, in other words, the taxpayers paid for it. But there's not only monetary cost, but also social, economic, and health cost. Residents in Chinatown and other neighborhoods along the expressway had to endure the pollution, the noise, and the unsafe route to cross the expressway. And who decide? The community directly impacted by this project had little influence on the decisions made around the expressway. Therefore, this project is not considered equitable. More recently, another new development in the neighborhood has sparked a lot of discussion. That is the Real Park, an adaptive reuse project which completed its $11 million first phase in 2018. Some people might not know where the Real Park is located. To the right, you can see a map of Chinatown. The boundaries indicate PCDC's service area. Chinatown's commercial core is at the south of Vine Street. The Real Park is located north of Vine Street. Chinatown residents and community institutions are located both south and north side of Vine Street. The Real Park offers a unique opportunity to assess whether investments in public space can contribute to residential, commercial, and cultural gentrification, and what strategies might be used to more equitably redirect some of the increased revenue attributed to the park. Next, we have a great keynote speaker for you, Councilman Mark Squilla. He represents Philadelphia's 1st district, which includes Chinatown. He has been a partner and supporter for this project. Welcome, Councilman Squilla.
Language barrier that we have sometimes in the Chinatown community, but also to be able to let the people know what was available to them, what stimuluses were available, what they could apply for, what they were eligible for, so forth and so on. So as we move forward, and as we met through the Equity Lab, you mentioned a couple of the projects, one being the cap over the Vine Street. But let's just talk about Chinatown in general. Chinatown is obviously a very unique neighborhood and community. They've been probably the Chinatown in the country that people model themselves after to see how long it's not only been in place, but how much they stand for small businesses in the community, but also the residents and the affordability of staying in Chinatown. We saw in other municipalities how the affordability has sort of gone away, and therefore we lost some of the ethnic background of the community, and therefore also lost some of the Chinatowns in the area. It's something that we don't want to do here in the city of Philadelphia. I think we want to look at that as a model. We want to keep that as strong as possible moving forward. And we do that through collaboration and working with it. I mean, not everything we do as a city is always what I would like to say is benefits all residents in the city of Philadelphia. So we constantly need advocacy from the community itself, working with their council members and colleagues in council, but also our state and federal elected officials. See the thumbs up. So as we talk about Chinatown, there's always challenges in any community, but Chinatown has three big challenges, and one is the affordability of the community. Two is the growth and gentrification or growth in this area and surrounding areas. And three is the ability to keep the businesses up and running in a way not only COVID related, but as the challenges of the surrounding areas crashing in on it. Chinatown and the Cal Hill community are border each other and overlap each other per se on the west side of the district. So the challenge is how do we work together as a community, both with the Callawhill folks and the Chinatown folks, and getting the same goal. And I believe both communities have a lot of the same interests. And part of the interest is how do we keep the community affordable, whether it's through business models, through the arts. How do we make sure our rents are in a place where we could not only keep the people who are currently there for forever, but also attract other businesses and art forms into the community so that we could keep the diversity of the neighborhood and the community alive. And then how do we look at what's happening in the community and the changes that we have? We mentioned the rail park and some of the other things that happen. How do we keep these benefits from changing the community in a way that makes it more acceptable for newcomers to come in and not so much for the people who lived in this community for generations? What we hear from a lot of our neighborhoods now, they feel like not only council, but maybe the mayor's office and others aren't really listening to what we call the generational people who lived in these communities for long periods of time. And now everybody's listening to the newer people that are moving in and sort of not giving them the same balance. And I think that's been a challenge for some of us. I have that in a lot of my neighborhood districts. Should I slow down? Okay. I just make sure the translation is being able to catch up. But the challenge is how do we work both with the people who are moving into communities and how do we keep their voice alive along with the voice of the people who live in the neighborhoods forever. And I think the way we do that is by listening to everybody in those communities, but understanding that we need them to talk to each other, because what I found by doing this in a lot of the other neighborhoods is that they really have a lot of the same interests. It's just they go about doing things a little differently. And some of them, newer people may be a little more aggressive in their tactics and take things to a level where some of the generational people will do things more gradual and sometimes stay behind the scenes and only get upset when there's something wrong going on, and then they all come involved and get involved at that moment. So what our goal would be is to try to get the organizations to stay involved during this process. We had the process with the CAP. It was mainly a federal process that was driven, and it was sort of like an unfunded process that says, what are your ideas on how to cap the Vine Street Expressway? Me being on the DVRPC board sort of gives us a little bit of help, I think. This year, I'm going to be the chair of the board. And so this is the year sort of we could have a little more input and insight into how we could maybe get some of those dollars to maybe partner with other sources to realize something like the cap over Vine Street Expressway. I mean, it's always great to think big and it's great to have plans, but if we don't have the resources to put them into place, we sort of fall behind. And then we think again, oh, we're doing all this work. Again, nobody's listening to us. So I think this year moving forward, we're going to have an opportunity to see if we could add it to a tip or make it a priority of the state and the DVRPC. And these are something that by working with PCDC and some of the community leaders in the Chinatown community will hopefully make that happen. You know, as we talk about the rail park, I mean, there was a big challenge on whether that would be a good, bad thing for the community. I see open space as very beneficial to a community, both for new and older residents. We see how Franklin Square has matriculated to be basically the only open space we have as a Chinatown residents and businesses are concerned. We've partnered with Historic Philadelphia. I know there's going to be a struggle this year for financing with them, but we've partnered with them and the Chinatown community to be able to use that park, and even having events in the park that may seem private but help us to maintain the park and have programming in the park, free programming in the park, and have, you know, Lantern Festival as a collaboration with Chinatown to maybe get people to visit some of our businesses and go to the Lantern Festival at the same time. I think these are all positive things that we could do. And I see the same thing with the rail park. And I think we got to use that if we could be able to come together and support these type of developments where that as a community benefits when you're building this, you could then have access to maybe affordable housing close to the rail park, make some form of the rail park into an overlay where you could have anybody who does develop in those areas a certain distance from the rail park have to have certain requirements placed on them. These have been done in other areas, and so it's something that we could look at as part of Chinatown and Calla to see how we could work with council and planning to put something like that in place moving forward, so that we can not only protect the interest of the surrounding community, but build a community and add another open space for them. I think would benefit them all. These are my opinions, not so much opinions of PCDC or anybody else. So, but I do think that the challenges sometimes lead to opportunities. We have plenty of challenges even with the Chinatown community as far as taxes. We see the increase in assessments that have gone on. We work with PCDC on many instances to be able to look at that and say, how do we protect our businesses and even our homeowners when, as the values of the properties go up, as newer people move into the communities, we see the assessment values of our homes become sometimes unaffordable. How do we protect them? How do we put subsidies in place? And then how do we help appeal those taxes? Because a lot of times when people first get their notice, it really doesn't tell you a tax bill. It gives you just an assessment change. So how do we then get that information to the folks, whether it's a small business or whether it's a resident, to say, hey, if you got an assessment, look at it, see what that means, and let's help you to realize what the tax is going to be in the following year, so then we can help you to appeal that. We've had many challenges with AVI. I've been a staunch advocate, not so much against it, but just to make sure that it is implemented fairly, so that we could then put some safeguards in place so that we can protect our residents and small businesses. We need them to survive. Our small businesses are our backbones of the communities. They're the backbones, really, of the city of Philadelphia. And if we keep changing their tax structure or raising it to a way where they're no longer able to exist, we're going to lose the feel of what attracted so many people to our city in the first place. The reason why people, I think, are excited about moving into Philadelphia and looking to Philadelphia is because we had sort of a city of neighborhoods. We had a city where people felt like they could talk to each other and they feel comfortable, whether it's a family member. Some generation people are in the same neighborhood for 3 generations or 4 generations, and they've been there for 50, 60, 80 years. Cecilia, for one, right, who's been there for a long time and have been advocating for Chinatown. So, these are things that we want to maintain as we continue to grow. I don't look at growing as a means to destroying what we have. I think we could do both. I think we have to do it carefully and smartly, but we also have to put certain requirements in place in order to make sure that we maintain that as we grow, we maintain the same livability as we had before we started to grow. And it is a challenge. We're been working on the Housing Trust Fund to make sure that we're adding $20 million extra a year in. That was negotiated really through a 1% construction tax that we imposed back in council a couple of years ago. Now that did pass council, but with an agreement with the mayor, we withdrew that bill and it promised to have $20 million a year put into the Housing Trust Fund from the roll-off of that current year's abatement. So the first year of the abatement, that money would go right into the city's general fund, but it's not. It's going to go into the Housing Trust Fund. So therefore, we continue to grow affordable housing. But I think the key to affordable housing is to be able to implement mixed income housing, where we require developers to, because of a bonus, to be able to have a percentage of each development to have low-income housing, or from right now it's like 60, 80% housing ability. So these are really challenging things to do, but I think we're getting buy-in now from a lot of the development community. They see the benefits of it. We also see the benefits of having mixed income as a selling point. A lot of people now want to live in areas and communities that have people of all walks of life, because diversity really builds character in a community. So the affordability part is something that is important. And I think we could even tie that into the development of, say, the rail park or another development that comes along the way. I mean, Chinatown was so lacking of recreational space and open space and the building of the community center, which a lot of people really didn't believe was ever going to happen. And PCD worked on that for 20 years, way before I was even in office. And, there was people still to the day they broke ground that were saying it'll never happen. And so, the vision and the vision of the community and the leadership has allowed a lot of things to happen. There's now a community center that Chinatown could call their own. And there's now a place where we as a community can look to and point to and says, listen, if you're really a will to do this, we could do it no matter how many people say, no, it's not going to happen. And so as a council person working with this, and I was first in, I was hand in hand with the city looking at a lot of these places get built. And, as the community center was being built, we had plenty of meetings where people were telling us that it's not going to work and it's not going to happen. And the persistence of the Chinatown community, where they even went out and got money from other elders and people within the community to finally fill the gap to make this project work, was amazing. So it just shows you the wherewithal we have from the leadership there in Chinatown, and the willingness of myself to work with them. And even though we weren't able to get all the money we needed from the city part of it, I think the city leadership learned a lot on the ability of Chinatown to get something done if they really put their mind to it. We've had several challenges along the way. I know I'm only supposed to talk for 5 minutes, that are happening in Chinatown. But I think by constant communication and coordination, we don't always have to agree. And John could tell you and others that, sometimes we go back and forth on how to do things. But one thing I do know is we will always work together to benefit Chinatown as a whole, and work with both Chinatown and the Cal Hill community where they overlap to make sure that people feel like their voices are heard. And as long as we continue to do that, we'll have some positive input along the way. Chinatown is something that we need to save. It's something that I think is very important in the mindset of not only Philadelphia but the United States. As we see gentrification throughout a lot of our major cities, we see the loss of what we had as ethnic communities. I think we need to look at it as a part of the historic task force. We looked at communities as part of the historic nature of the city of Philadelphia, and what we need to do as a city to protect that and to make sure that that stays, in a way. It doesn't mean you have to keep it depressed, or it doesn't mean you have to not implement positive changes, but implement those positive changes with safeguards in place so that we can maintain the fabric that was there before these positive changes went into place. So I'm open for questions, and I know there's a lot of questions out there. I want to thank Anna Purng, too, who's been a big advocate, not only with the Chinatown community, but also for the different abilities, children and people with different abilities, and how important that is to also strive to make sure we have valid input from that community as we move forward. So thank you all for letting me join you. Looking forward to having a conversation, and hopefully we could make some positive input and positive decisions moving forward. And happy to work with you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilman Squilla. And Councilman Squilla will stay with us for the discussion and will share his insights on some of the issues we will be discussing today. And now I would like to invite our audience to put in the chat box some of the things you want to learn more about from our conversation, or if you have any questions. We also want to know what you are expecting from this conversation, and hopefully we can address those questions or expectations during our panel discussion. Lamay, do you see any questions or response? So we will not be answering questions for now, but we will have a question and answer session after the panel discussion. So now I would like to introduce our moderator, Anna Purng. Anna serves as on the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. In 2015, she helped fund the Chinatown Disability Advocacy Project, an intersectional coalition which helps immigrants with disabilities and their families advocate for equity, inclusion, accessibility, and justice in all facets of the society. She and her family are proud Chinatown residents. Anna.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Yue, and thank you so much, Councilmember Squilla, for that very informative remarks, and also for such a significant commitment of time. Your partnership, your accessibility, and responsiveness to our community is greatly appreciated. And thank you so much to PCDC, Policy Link, to New Mainstream Media for hosting this event. I wanted to give our panelists a few moments to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with John Chin, just very quickly. Everyone knows who you are, but could you just say a few words about your connection to Chinatown?
Yeah. Of course, I'm the executive director of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, but I'm a proud native of Chinatown, born in Chinatown and raised in Chinatown, and my passion is to ensure that Chinatown is here for 150 more years.
Terrific. Thank you. And could I have James Crowder? Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening. My name is James Crowder. I am a senior associate in an organization called Policy Link. And I've had the pleasure over most of 2019 of working with PCDC on a research report around the rail park and equitable development.
Terrific. Thank you. Selena Yip.
Hi, I'm Selena. I'm the executive director for Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival. I am a proud advocate for Chinatown community, a former intern at PCDC, Super grateful to be here. So thank you for PCDC for inviting me. And yeah, thanks so much for coming out.
Great. Thank you. And Dan Cao?
Hello, everyone. This is Dan. I'm the publisher of Metro Chinese Weekly Taiwan to Sport and Philly Guide, 非常生活攻略. So probably everyone knows our publication and media channel better than myself. At the same time, I also a small business owner in Chinatown that operate an email restaurant. And yeah, that's everything about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And, consistent with our previous Equity Lab Chinatown Future Histories event, we just want to remind everyone some ground rules. So this is a very diverse community, and you can see, for those of you who are lucky to see the video, the gallery views of all the people joining us, we are a very diverse group of people with different views, and we ask that people keep the discussion civil. We're here to listen, to learn, and to share perspectives. And like Councilmember Squilla encouraged us, to find some commonalities. What are some shared values and priorities that we can work on together? So in the spirit of that, we wanted to go into our panel discussion. We have a lot to cover tonight, ranging from development to racial equity. So I'm going to start off with John Chen. Can you tell us a little bit about, why PCDC and Policy Link created the Chinatown Future Histories project? UA covered the background, the timeline of development, but what is the significance of this project in this moment? And John, you're on mute.
Can you unmute, John? John Chin.
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you for that question, Anna. Yes, so this year Chinatown is celebrating 150 years of existence. The Chinese people built this community for the Chinese people. Chinatown was a place of opportunity. Families could live here and be safe from racism. Chinese could open a business to support the family. And new immigrants could arrive in Philadelphia and Chinatown to find jobs and temporary housing. But, many people don't know the history of the neighborhood today. And many people don't know that Chinatown was called a red light district. It was basically a slum where most people did not want to live. There were apartments in Chinatown for homeless men. Homeless men were sleeping in the streets. Every corner of Chinatown had a bar, and there were prostitutes in the neighborhood. So the Chinese worked very hard to transform Chinatown into a safe community for families. So today you almost do not notice the past history of Chinatown. And also, the one challenge we have is that government does not always appreciate and understand the challenges of Chinese immigrants. Too many times, government has proposed projects that may benefit the city as a whole, but those projects harm Chinatown. Over the years, they've proposed to build a casino, a baseball stadium, a federal prison in Chinatown. They've demolished our homes and forced our families to leave Chinatown to make way for these projects. So the reason for this project is that PCDC and Policy Link created this project to help residents stay in Chinatown and to prevent families from being displaced from Chinatown due to rising housing prices. So this project was in direct response to the city and private financing of the Friends of the Rail Park, the park at 12th Street. Sometimes good intentions like the park can hurt innocent people. This is what is happening here in Chinatown. It's happened in Atlanta, Chicago, and New York, all places where there were investments, private and government investments in parks to improve the neighborhood. But it also has unintended consequences of increasing real estate values and thus increasing housing costs. So this has forced low-income families to leave the neighborhood just when the services and amenities are coming in. So the purpose of this project is really to provide a platform for the people of Chinatown and people of this neighborhood to talk about inequities. It is about implementing solutions so that low-income families can stay and share in the benefits in Chinatown. So I'm happy that PolicyLink is our partner, because PolicyLink brings the experience and knowledge on how to preserve Chinatown based on experience across the country. And hopefully we can do this for all people of all income levels and of a diverse background, so we can all stay and share and enjoy Chinatown.
Thank you, John. And, you mentioned PolicyLink. So my next question is to James Crowder. Equitable development is an approach for meeting the needs of underserved communities through policies and programs that reduce the disparities while fostering spaces that are healthy and vibrant. Can you talk a little bit about the rail park from the three questions that Yue mentioned earlier? Who benefits, who pays, and who decides?
Sure, and thank you again to PCDC for extending the invitation to speak tonight. The rail park, I think Councilman Squilla already kind of alluded to the dearth of open space and green space in Chinatown, and so the rail park presents a really important amenity as far as who benefits, right? So the entire neighborhood could benefit from the additional green space. There's an environmental benefit as far as additional spaces to have exercise and places for children to play. So that the entire neighborhood could benefit. However, we've seen a trend with adaptive reuse projects like the rail park, where there are unintended consequences. And I think, the health benefits, in some places, the health benefits are used as a reason to kind of advance projects without fully having had the necessary community dialogue about the impact of the project. And so we were excited to partner with PCDC for around this project, to better dig into the who pays and who decides questions of this project. And so, as Councilman Squilla mentioned, there are the increased property values that come, which is a great benefit for homeowners, and the property taxes that come along with it for those homeowners that are prepared and excited about that. But those taxes often get put off in multifamily units on renters that may not have a say in that process. For example, the business improvement district that was proposed before did not include any renters as part of the decision-making board, although that they would be impacted by the project. So part of what made the Rail Park project so special is the community engagement, the deep-rooted community engagement that undergirded it. And so we had an advisory committee comprised of renters, owners, parishioners, folks that for whom Chinatown is a critical asset in the community, to better understand how we can incorporate the community voice into the decision-making process. And I think ultimately the need for projects like this is because the housing market is just not going to correct itself until it's too late. Either you see a collapse like you saw in 2007, or that much success and the loss of ethnic enclaves, like the councilman mentioned, like Queen Village and Graduate Hospital, which were once rich neighborhoods of color, but because of an unfettered housing market and about the protections in place, we've lost them for good. And so I'll stop there. I think that touches on your question.
Thank you very much, James. That's very, very helpful. And so my next question is to Councilmember Squilla. I know prior to the pandemic, you were really instrumental in facilitating meetings and dialogues with PATCO and Philadelphia Bar Foundation. The community had tried and wasn't very successful, but you brought everyone to the table. And you spent many hours, and we even organized a tour of Chinatown for those different parties to really come see and experience the community through the residents' eyes. And that was a very positive discussion. So what is the status of those projects? Are they still happening, post pandemic? And how can the community re-engage in those discussions about community benefits?
Well, I know we've been in contact, as Councilman Squilla, we've been in contact with the RPA, who's leading the development with the PACO site at Franklin Square. And they had told us they would re-engage in September. So we're hoping like mid-August or something, we could set up a date with PCDC through PCDC to look at what benefits can be garnered from the Chinatown community. There were some ideas tossed around at earlier meetings of signage and directions and other things. And so they told us that probably like mid-August or so, they would throw out some dates for September that we could do a re-engagement and look at some other maybe community benefits that could be associated with that. We had worked with Tanyel, and we could follow up probably like 10th or 15th of August to see if we could throw some dates out to PCDC to see what would be available to the community, and probably even do another tour. The project, from what I understand, is still moving forward as far as the head house on the Franklin Square portion. I don't think everything's been worked out as far as the park and is concerned, but I think that's still a work in progress. So I think these dialogues, and I do want to thank PCDC too, because we were making some noise with them, knowing that we weren't a part of the conversation. But Anna stepped up and PCDC stepped up and really made a lot more noise than we did. And when we started reaching out again back to PCDC, they were more than willing to come and talk. So sometimes, it's good to be diplomatic, and other times it's good to, hang from the trees and make some noise. And that actually got them more involved. And then when they did actually the tour of Chinatown, I got to say they were pretty impressed with the organization of Chinatown and the community itself, and looked at Chinatown now more as a partner in this, instead of some neighbors that are a neighborhood that it's going to be affected by it. So I still feel confident that they will continue this dialogue, and hopefully we could agree on some community benefits as we move forward. And PCDC will be the lead on that, and so we will be setting up a meeting through them, but it'll probably be in mid-September, but the dates will probably go out in mid-August.
That's wonderful news to hear, and I'm sure wonderful news for our partners like Asian Americans United. I see that Alex Webb is here. Thank you so much, Alex, for being a part of those, almost bi-weekly meetings with PCDC. All of us trying to figure out, where are common issues where we can work together. My next question is for Selena. With the COVID-19 pandemic, community engagement has gone virtual, such as platforms like this. And that kind of requires technology and reliable internet access. And your grandparents live in Chinatown. Can you share a little bit about their experience during the pandemic and how some of our Chinatown elders are going through the pandemic?
Yeah, I want to preface my answer by just saying that, like, obviously my grandparents, their experience is not everyone's experience. But I know from like my point of view, like I haven't seen my paternal grandmother for, I guess it's going on like 4 months now. And I mean, I've seen her, I've gone and dropped off like groceries and stuff, but I haven't, she calls me every single day, twice a day, telling me that she's bored. And telling me that she, why don't you come over for dinner? And I tell her, I'm like, why I can't come over for dinner, but she's got like some memory problems. And so every day I sort of have to repeat myself. So, I mean, everyone's social distancing. So, all of the adult daycare centers that exist in Chinatown, I think there's like 3 or 4. All of them are closed, and that's like the only space where elders can go and like hang out with each other. There's no outdoor like all of like the young people and all of the people who don't really have to, aren't immunocompromised, are all going out and having picnics and doing these like outdoor dining things. Like that doesn't exist in Chinatown, right? Like that doesn't exist for elders in our community to be able to go to a green space and socially distance, but still be able to talk to each other. Technology is, I mean, for some grandparents, it's easier. My mom's parents, both of them have smartphones. They're also, 10, 20 years younger than my dad's mom. So she's got a flip phone. They've got smartphones. So they're able to video call with all their grandchildren. But my grandmother can't. And she's very isolated in the apartment that she lives in. So it's definitely a difficult time. It's a very lonely time. My mom has been telling her parents not to even go, just not go outside to see their friends in the parking lot space of their apartment complex. Even that feels dangerous because they are immunocompromised. So yeah, it's definitely difficult, and I know that there are resources out there. My aunt, who owns a store in Chinatown, has kept her doors open and is only letting elders in to buy newspapers, because that's the only source of news and information that they can get in Chinese language. Like not everyone is able to buy whatever cable box to get Hong Kong news or Chinese news. So she's specifically kept her doors open because she's one of the only resources for the elder community to be able to keep in touch with the world. But other than that, it's really difficult for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think for those of us who are regulars at PCDC community meetings, normally a room like this would be packed with our elders, and so we are definitely missing their voices, their presence, their perspectives and their priorities certainly matter. And as we move forward with, future community engagement, future tour with PATCO, we would love to include them. So thank you, Selena, for sharing. And, an audience member did ask, what does PATCO stand for? And so my apologies. The PATCO project that we are talking about is the proposed reopening of a train station at Franklin Square Park. So earlier during this call, we mentioned that Franklin Square Park is the only green space, or has historically been our only green space. And the new proposed reopening of this Franklin Square station would deplete our green space at that park. And so the addition of the rail park is welcome because it adds open space. But there are some, planning issues that, become an issue as we go forward. And that's why it's so important. And in that vein, I wanted to ask Councilmember Squilla, do you see capping the Vine Street Expressway as a way that we can reclaim land for Chinatown? That is a question from Mary Yee.
I mean, absolutely. It sort of goes into the same, I guess, faction as the rail park. If you cap it, what open space can you make available to the community? What does that do? What are the unintended consequences of it? But again, like I said earlier, I see that as a positive. I see adding open space and areas that was previously taken away from the community to be able to give back to the community as a positive. And I think what we need to do is to make sure we have safeguards in place to make sure affordability or even mixed income housing is part of any new project that comes that way. So, I mean, it's a little harder work, but I like the idea. Obviously, I think this is a little more long-term. Well, I think the rail park is really long-term too. I don't know if that'll be done for a long time, but I think that as long as we do it smartly and in conjunction with mixed income and affordable both housing and small business to make that a part of our growth plate, I think we'll be successful. So I do see it as a positive.
Thank you. And I know I've had conversations with Sean at the Rail Park. She was interested as well as Asian Arts Initiative. They do a lot of work on the Callow Hill neighborhood. And so they feel like something like a Vine Street Expressway CAP project would mutually benefit Chinatown and Callow Hill neighborhoods. And it gives us something to work together on. So, and I just wanted to share a question from Harry regarding the PATCO plans. Are you aware if they made any changes to the designs following the tour? When we did the tour, we kind of showed where children and elders tend to congregate. It is unfortunately on that corner that is the entrance to the park, and that's where the proposed construction was. You know if they were able to scale back?
I have not seen any changes to the plan to date. When they reach out in mid-August to set up that meeting, we'll make sure that's part of the questions that they come to us in their meeting in September. So, but I haven't seen any to date.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I know that, the pandemic has kind of slowed some things down, so we can appreciate that, you've been pretty busy. But I did want to go to our panelist, Dan. He's been waiting very patiently. I wanted to ask Dan, you're a business owner in Chinatown. The people you employ are workers who are in Chinatown. And so when we talk about the concerns of the small business communities, we're really talking about the impact on workers and families as well. How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted you, your family, your employees, and how has it affected other Chinatown small businesses?
Hello. Yes. I think Chinatown, just as many other areas in the city, in other areas in the nation, has been greatly impacted by the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, I think Chinatown already faced and struggling with competitions of other new areas, for example, in Northeast Philadelphia, in University City. So the more business established, more Chinese business established in these areas has been diluting the traffic from Chinatown. So the business owner in Chinatown has been struggling with the challenge of rising rents, but at the same time have to deal with the reduced traffic to Chinatown. So I think that's an area PCDC has been working very hard try to improve the business and the traffic to the Chinatown. After the pandemic, I think even before the pandemic in the United States, as early as in February, the business community in Chinatown already feels the impact. Probably 1 or 2 months earlier than other business in Central City. So I remember that the end of February, that's probably January 25th. That's about the Chinese New Year. So for email restaurants had a reservation as early as 3 weeks ago. So we have private rooms, we have long tables, they're able to fit 10 to 15 people for each sections. So when the pandemic became a national news or worldwide news, the impact our business community in China, in Philadelphia. So we were fully booked. For email restaurants, we have 2 private banquet rooms. We have probably 8 or 9 parties with at least 10 to 15 people. So prior to on January 25th, maybe 1 or 2 days before the New Year, we have been receiving cancellations, telephone phone call for canceling the reservation. So I think the Chinese, because of email, majority of the customer, I think probably 80% are Chinese students, families, and so the demographic we service are very sensitive to the news, to what's going on in China. And so I think at that time we have a total cancellation of probably 6 or 7 parties. So this like the round tables we have, the private room we have, is basically is really like the revenue generating channel for Sichuan style restaurant like us, and we have been reserving the space for the parties, and we have to cancel like the last minute and not able to fill in the space in the next 2 days. So I think at that time, so that weekend alone, we lose probably $3,000 or $4,000 like revenue we could have. But overall, on the weekends of the Chinese New Year, in the end of January, I think overall we have the business we're doing fine. I mean, it's still one of the best weekends we have in the last half year prior to the pandemic, because we still have walking traffic. We still have people come in to find like party rooms, and but immediately after the Chinese New Year, I think Yimei restaurants and many other restaurants in Chinatown, they feel the drop in business. I think the 2 or 3 weeks following the Chinese New Year, on average, probably about 30% drop of the revenue of sales. I at the same time, I run new mainstream media, many Chinese Weekly, and Philly Guide. We have many business our clients for our marketing and advertising. So we have a bubble tea shop as clients. We have hot restaurants. We have other Cantonese restaurants in Chinatown. I mean, almost everybody got hit. So gradually, however, like in the probably 1 or 2 months later, I think in the second half of February, the business picked up again. I share this insight with Philadelphia Inquiry when they came to our restaurant for the interview. I think at that time, our customers and like residents in Philadelphia and also everybody in the United States maybe feel that that's maybe just something going on in China. It's not like going to impact us in the United States. So we see traffic and the revenue went up in the second half of February. But until the pandemic and some cases occurs in Boston, in New York, in Seattle, then we see a more dramatic drop again, like in the end of February. So I think it's a week. Very funny that the week before city of Philadelphia closed, made the announcement that all the business, all the dining service have to be closed. We have a huge party come to Yimei. It's actually the whole office staff of what's the name again? Visit Philly. So the CEO of Visit Philly and the whole crew, about over 40 people in the office, came to Yimei to support. So as a gesture to support the hospitality industry in China, in Philadelphia, as well as Chinatown as a business communities. So they had a wonderful dinner, like a lunch party at Yimei. When they left, for each of our staff, for each of our servers, host, they give $100 as a tip. As a tip. So we think that at the same time they also share like the pictures on their social media, and we thought, okay, that's really great, and we had some hope. Following the events on Tuesday, the next few days became really like the business became horrible. I think I talked to friends in suburb, in Lower Mandarin, in City Avenue, in Lower Mandarin, and even for American business, they feel the impact. So at that time, I think not only talk about 20 or 30%, it's actually 60 or 70% drop of the business. So even if City of Philadelphia decide not to close the restaurants, close the dining service, we know that a few businesses in Chinatown are already planning to close, because some of the businesses in Brooklyn, in Flushing, already, volunteer to close their business. And I know,
Sorry.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Councilmember Squilla has to leave soon.
Okay.
But I think that the feedback that you shared, just that, it's important that as the city revives its hospitality industry, that Chinatown continues to be a part of that conversation and prioritized. And as a Chinatown resident myself, I see businesses closing for good, and it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
These are the businesses that my kids have grown up with their whole lives, and it's devastating. And I really appreciate your leadership in bringing those stories to light. We did have some questions before Councilmember Squilla leaves. So folks had asked, for an update on the 800 Vine Street project, specifically. So, there were plans to build the Equal Justice Center. That was the reason why the Redevelopment Authority awarded the proposal to them, or the parcel of land to them. But now the community has heard that the EJC is going to be drastically scaled down. There are concerns that maybe they might not even build it. And in that case, they feel like it's a very different proposal. So the question from the community is, can you require them that they continue to build the EJC? Because, Chinatown really does not have a lot of available parcels of land. This land means a lot to our community. And so any reduction in the size of the buildings will kind of fail to use that parcel for its best use. So that was one question. And then, so can you require them to build the EJC to the way that they originally proposed? The second was about affordable housing. How do we increase affordable housing in Chinatown?
Okay, thank you. And the good question about 9th and Race, 800 Vine, is still up there. And I agree with you. If this project drastically changes, I think we will require and request a new RFP to go out there. The last we heard from the Equal Justice Center, they said they were sort of not all the organizations were going to go there as originally thought, and that they were still trying to scale up their project in a way that it would be the same as proposed, but with less, I guess, people that were initially part of that plan. We haven't heard back from them since it was probably, I would say, the end of the year. So maybe January or so. So I think it's time. I have to re-engage with the PRA and Greg Heller to see where that plan is going. The last I heard, all other agreements were in place. I think John Wee was going to do a hotel. There was a affordable senior project with the market rate project, and then the Equal Justice Center. Now, the Equal Justice Center was supposed to be the first phase. So if that has changed, I think we need to know that. And if that's the case, and that project is not able to move forward as planned and as selected, then I think we need to go back to the drawing board and see how we could best put another proposal out there that the community would then get to weigh in on again. I don't have that exact answer, though. John, I'll ask you if you could do me a favor and send me an email on that question. I will go to PRA and see where we are on that, so I can get that information back to you as soon as possible.
Okay.
And I do apologize. I have another Zoom call. It was supposed to be at 7. I pushed it back to 7:15, so I'd be able to stay with you guys longer. And so I do have to jump off that. But affordable housing is very important. We have to make sure, and what we're trying to do is, we were looking at inclusive zoning to see how every new opportunity or every new project that is zoned in the city of Philadelphia, how could that include a portion of affordable housing, whether it's 10%, but not only that, what portion of AMI are we looking at? 30% AMI is very difficult, and we do that through a lot of our subsidies and through vouchers. But even if we could look at 60% and 80% AMI, where we have a lot of working class people that have a hard time finding not only homes, but even rental places. And we need to make sure that people who are working in Chinatown and live in Chinatown or want to live in Chinatown are able to do that. I saw Harry's real quick questionnaire on how long do we need to wait before we see a change in the ninth and Vine proposal. I'm going to say not long. I'm going to say maybe by the end of the summer we should know where that is going. I'm going to ask that question and get an answer for you. It has drug out for a long time. It's been over a year since the selection of that parcel. That parcel is a hard parcel to develop in the first place, and we went through a challenge of two great proposals that were up there, and it wasn't always agreed on who was the best proposal, but one did get selected. And so if that's going to change dramatically, I think we need to be able to go back to the drawing board. So I'm going to say by the end of the summer, we should have something in place where we know whether it's going to happen or not. And if it's not, then we have to look at trying to put it back out.
Thank you. And I know that City Council just approved, close to $9 million for emergency temporary housing, including potentially tiny homes. I know that you, Councilmember Brooks, Gim, and Gautier have been instrumental in kind of advocating for affordable and emergency housing. So, we appreciate your help.
Well, thank you. And we were up, Councilmember Gautier, Dom, myself, and Gim were actually up in Lancaster today looking at some tiny house developments, how they're sort of pre-made and then fit in. We have to look at our zoning code and see how it works, how it could work within our model of city living. But listen, we got to look at all options. There's not one thing that's going to fix this, and we need to make sure we have multiple options out there so that we can address the issues that you see with people living on the streets in the city of Philadelphia. I don't think living in tents and on sidewalks is the answer, and we need to do better. If we're a city of the first class, that's something that we need to really work on. So thank you all for giving me the time to speak. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. Sorry, I do have to leave, and like I was late getting in on this call, I'll be late getting in on the next one. But I really appreciate it, and let's keep the dialogue moving forward and keep the conversation and the lines open. So thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, and I know that there were some folks who had a question for Councilmember Squilla. So I know Urgent Care Chinatown did want to ask a question. Did you still want to pose your question? We'll document it and we will make sure we follow up and get the answer for you. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hey, yeah, if I could. So my name is Jing Jing. I'm with MyDoc Urgent Cares. We are a new business in Chinatown. We opened up September of 2019. We are hit pretty hard by the pandemic, not only because of the reasons everyone has described, because we're also a new business, but we have observed the challenges in access multilingual healthcare among the patients that we have seen. The fears of COVID is more noticeable among the Chinese populations, and we have seen people not seeing a provider for a couple months for situations where we have to send them to ER recently. So I guess my question to the councilman was that would he be supportive of another kind of kind of a community center, urgent care style community center. They're more convenient for consumers, located right in the heart of Chinatown. I guess it does require some level of government funding, maybe at the federal or city level, but we have seen tremendous challenges. The nearest multilingual health center is at 6 in Callow Hill. It is kind of in the neighborhood, but not exactly in the heart of Chinatown. I feel that if you have a more accessible, low-cost healthcare services that would attract more people living elsewhere in Philadelphia, have a reason to visit Chinatown. It's not just for grocery shopping, but they get their healthcare needs met. So that's kind of was my question to the councilman, and perhaps to PCDC as well. Thank you for taking my my call. I guess my question.
Thanks. Thank you. Wanted to give maybe John a chance to answer.
Yeah, Jing, we will definitely present this question to the councilman. Unfortunately, he could not stay with us. But I agree with you. I think to be a comprehensive neighborhood and community, we have to make sure that our neighborhood has all the services. And again, Chinatown is one of those neighborhoods that has not received equal resources and equal treatment from government. And healthcare is one of them. It is very unfair for people to say that the people from this neighborhood should go to a center or health center that's outside this community. Many communities have easy access to health centers, but Chinatown does not. So I think your point is very valid. And I believe that PCDC has always said that Chinatown is a hub for cultural, recreation, education, religious, and health activities. People come to Chinatown for services, and healthcare is one of them. So I think your point is very on target.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a question from Mandy Lynn very quickly, so we will need Agnes to interpret.
I don't think Agnes can speak on this original audio, so I will do that. So her question was, a lot of parents in Chinatown are concerned about school reopening because they are afraid that kids will get infected, and parents are inclined to keep kids at home to study online. But if kids are staying home, they cannot be taught by their original teachers, and they were separated from their original classmates, and they are worried that the teachers are not familiar with the students, and which will lead to the remote learning experience worse, with a worse education quality, and and students cannot be together with their own teachers and classmates. So he hope that the online kids taking online classes have the equal opportunities to access the education provided by their own teacher.
So for those folks who may not be aware of what's happening with the school district's fall reopening plan, during the pandemic, there was remote instruction, but families at nearby neighborhood school, McCall Elementary School, reported that they only received maybe 15 minutes to up to an hour of live instruction each day from their teachers, as compared to schools like Masterman, where the teachers were instructing live 6 hours per day. So when these families are talking about this, difficult decision, do they stay at home, not go to work, and earn income? Do they try to support their children's remote learning? There are equity issues around that have forced them into economic choices not to return to work. And so, Mandy, I really appreciate you bringing that up for this audience, because so far we have talked about our elders, our business owners, and workers, but the workers who are also parents are now in this difficult decision regarding education. So thank you for pointing out the equity issues there. I wanted to go, as we're getting close to the Q&A, like end of this event, but I wanted to give James a chance to talk about the findings of the Chinatown Future Histories report, and what are some of the recommendations from that report that can support equity.
Yes. So we are excited to finally, after months of work, have the report released today. And there are a number of salient points. I think the main one being around the importance of community engagement, authentic community engagement that centers those with lived experience and those that are most impacted by new development, such as the rail park. through the Equity Lab, we learned, there is an obligatory process for community engagement that has to be done, a box that has to be checked. There's also a way to have more comprehensive conversations and really engage residents. So in terms of, the recommendations, I would put them in two different camps, one around empowerment and one around affordability. So that empowerment goes back to the community engagement that we spoke about. And so, one recommendation is around better engagement for the land disposition process for publicly owned land, like 800 Vine Street. And having a more meaningful process where residents are actually listened to. Another example of an empowerment recommendation is something called the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. It's been around in DC for 20 years, but essentially as multifamily building owners take advantage of a changing housing market and want to sell, renters in those buildings have the right of first refusal and are able to work with a community-based organization to try and purchase that building and keep it affordable in the community. Another piece of empowerment is around an inclusive business improvement district, right? So I already alluded to the bid proposal that was introduced last year that did not pass. There are ways to structure a governing board that includes renters and small business owners that may not own the property, but have a vested interest in a long-term history in the community, serving residents. And then when it comes to affordability, there's the community land trust model where land is maintained permanently affordable for 100 years or so, and then properties are leased on there. As well as revisiting, Councilman Squill already talked to looking at the zoning code. And so looking at something like a TIF, a tax increment finance, where, the same way that a bid was proposed, because there's the forethought and understanding that property values will increase once this amenity is introduced. How can we get ahead of that and redirect some of that realized increase in property values towards something like affordable housing? Portland has a similar model where, in certain neighborhoods that are growing, they have a TIF in place, and those funds are put into a pool of funds that can be used for things like down payment assistance for potential home buyers or for affordable housing construction. So those are just some of the recommendations. I see the link is put into the chat. You have put the link in the chat, and I'm happy to keep talking about that.
Thank you so much, James. I know it's a very dense report that captures, over a year of research, community input. And so I'm sure, we'll have a follow-up event just to go through it, but really appreciate your succinct summary. So I wanted to kind of also ask very quickly, because I know that this is something that we wanted to ask Councilmember Squilla, about equity. But, obviously we're part of a very large and diverse district. And so, constituents in this district have experienced both anti-Asian racism and anti-Black racism. And, we had wanted to ask them what are things that the city and the city council could do to better support residents. But I before we continue on with some of the equity discussions, I do want to ask Selena, what can AAPIs do to be better allies during this time of Black Lives Matter? Because I do think it's such an important thing to cover. And, can you tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing at Philly Asian Film Fest? How can cultural arts kind of play a role in creating some empathy, cross-cultural understanding?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the Asian Film Festival first. So we are one of very few film festivals in the city that are based around the stories of people of color, and obviously ours is specifically around Asian American, Asian diasporic voices. There's also the Latino Film Festival, and there's also Black Star. There's tons. And I mean, everyone knows Philly Film Society and Philly Film Festival, and they're great and they have great movies, but to support Latino Film Festival, to support PAF, the Asian American Film Festival, or Black Star, you're really supporting filmmakers and artists that are not always highlighted by mainstream film festivals like the Philly Film Festival. So we try to really focus on local stories. We try to really focus on obviously the Asian diaspora, and are really looking to support and highlight, you know, the fact that we exist in Philly. You know, there's quite a large number of communities in Philadelphia that are Asian American, and I think also to point out the fact that Asian America is not a monolith. I mean, we're all sitting here talking about Chinatown, which is great, and I love Chinatown, which is why I'm here, which is why I'm constantly advocating for our community. But you know, we've got communities all around Philadelphia that identify as Asian American as well, that are also dealing with similar issues of gentrification. I mean, you look at down on Washington Ave, the Vietnamese Plaza that was shut down, Hòa Bình Plaza, right? Like, I mean, you look at like Mifflin Square Park, I think it's called, that Cambodian, oh man, CAGP, I can't remember what exactly it stands for right now off the top of my head, but CAGP and CMAC and a lot of other Southeast Asian organizations work around that area. So yeah, I mean, the work that artists are doing, not just in film, but also in theater, in other kinds of like textile arts and things like that, all around the city, are really to show that we are, thank you, Sarah, Cambodian Association of Greater Philadelphia. But yeah, we're really here to show that like Asian America is not a monolith. The Asian identity is not a monolith. And unfortunately, we are sort of like perpetual foreigners because of how we look. And really the movement is to have people recognize our humanity, not just based on, you know, our faces. In terms of like how we can be better allies in this moment, I mean, we all have to work towards racial equity. And if we want to be humanized, we also have to humanize others. And we have to approach it with empathy. So I think like it's easier for us to say like, oh, Asian Americans or Asians have to confront their anti-Blackness. And I think that that's very true. And but to build on that is that we have to do it with empathy, and we have to do it in a way that's not villainizing ourselves. I think because we are also victims of the same kinds of systematic oppression, but we are also perpetrators. So and those two things can exist at the same time. We are able to be victimized as well as perpetrators of the same kinds of oppressions. So yeah, treat yourself with some empathy, treat others with empathy. I think that's the best way to be allies, and it's also to listen. I think listening is super important. I think we all tend to get really defensive when we are put in a position where we feel like we are being villainized, and for good reason. But yeah, I think the best way for us to be allies is definitely to be listening and to be really working on your own biases and your own issues and your own viewpoints.
Thank you, Selena. That's very powerful. I mean, I think it's like change begins with ourselves. And I really want to thank, you know, this very diverse group of people who have gathered here, you know, both to shape the future of Chinatown, but to recognize that there are broader issues that need to be addressed in an intersectional way. I wanted to turn it over to John to facilitate this last, you know, half hour that we have together. You know, we've heard a lot from our panelists. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, but we wanted to give our audience a chance to also unmute themselves and share some thoughts. I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for moderating this discussion. It's great to see all these folks attending our forum here tonight. And it's amazing how quickly this time has passed us, and we have barely scratched the surface of equity, investments in parks and what it all really means. We've just really touched the surface on that. So I'll just say that I'm pleased to see a few folks that has joined us on this call, this forum, who actually have had a very instrumental role in advancing equity in affordable housing, advancing equity in resources for neighborhoods that are low income, for neighborhoods that are of color. And they've done really great work throughout the city for the entire population of residents in Philadelphia. So with that, I know people probably have some questions, and if you want to type your questions in the chat box, that's fine. If you have a question, you can also raise your hand. I think there's a hand raising function on the screen here. And so going back, I think there was a question about building more affordable housing and maintaining it. So James Crowder, who we partner with from PolicyLink, touched upon some recommendations and solutions to attain equity. But specifically, how does a city or how does a neighborhood, James, build more affordable housing? We heard Councilman Squilla talk about a requirement that for-profit developers build in a certain percentage of housing. But what have you seen that works in other places, and what do you think has the strongest possibility of working here and using it as an example here in Chinatown for other neighborhoods?
Great question. Yes, I think that the voluntary inclusionary zoning that the councilman mentioned is a step and has some impact, but a mandatory inclusionary zoning program would have even more impact. You know, I think I don't know the Philly housing market data offhand, but I know nationally the housing market has not yet fallen due to COVID, and people are still buying. And so I'm anticipating a potential wave of speculation. And so having measures in place like mandatory inclusionary zoning is a step in the right direction. And I already touched on the community land trust model, which is already in place in Philadelphia. There are groups like Women's Community Revitalization Project that are doing CLTs and have been for years. But as far as the city's commitment to that and supporting that, there are places like the city of Buffalo in upstate New York, where, in consultation with community groups, the city decided to take 20 properties from its city-owned list of properties and to donate them to a nonprofit organization to turn them into community land trusts. The cost of construction in Philadelphia is higher than a lot of cities across the country, and if there's a way to eliminate the cost of acquisition, like through city-owned properties, that could have a tremendous impact on the ability to build affordable housing. I think that one last thing that I think the councilman's kind of reference to requirements for landlords as we think about the recovery from COVID-19 and what the support that's going to be given to landlords. There should be some type of stipulation that if there is any type of rental assistance or things like that go out, that there should be it should be tied to an affordability requirement or restriction. Those are two examples.
James, thank you very much. So I know sometimes talking about policies can be very difficult to understand. So I see Beth McConnell here from the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, and maybe we should ask the question. The question that we should ask is, from a renter's point of view, what are the resources that can be available? What can the city do to provide resources to the renter so they can remain in the affordable homes?
Sorry, John, were you asking me to respond to that?
Yeah, Beth. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, from the, I know we talk a lot about policy, but is there a simple layman's term that you can talk about that gives a renter the understanding of what's available to help keep people in homes?
Yeah, so obviously pre-COVID and post-COVID are two very well, it's a similar conversation, but the scale is just so much bigger, right? So, I think you and I have talked in PCDC staff about there really haven't been adequate housing trust fund resources that have come to Chinatown that would allow you to build more affordable homes that could remain permanently affordable. There's also very limited subsidy to keep rents affordable for even developers like PCDC, so that the very lowest income folks can get there. And part of the reason why we've pushed so hard for housing trust fund money is that those are dollars that could be available. Certainly $20 million more a year is great. It doesn't even scratch the surface of the need. And certainly post-COVID, when so many people are facing eviction, there's been some more resources. A lot of it's come from the federal government through the state, a little bit from the city as well with some of these housing trust fund dollars, and some, again, various federal resources that are doing some rental subsidies to help people avoid eviction. But that money's going to run out in just a matter of months. And so we really need more federal action to avoid the current eviction crisis. But it's not just that, it's long-term, permanent rental subsidy for either already affordable homes that aren't affordable enough or homes in the private market that need to be more affordable. We just need more resources to get there. And I know there's been a lot of work that's been done on eviction prevention that was referenced earlier. There's another piece, but certainly the dollars to pay the rent is a critical part.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. As a follow-up question that I see is, so what are the opportunities in Chinatown to what policies can Chinatown support? I think you referenced some programs. What are the policies that we can support that helps advance equity?
So I would say that in terms of policy change, that is. There are things that are feasible and things that need to just be considered and advanced. And so there's I mentioned in terms of what would empower residents to be able to have a more even playing field when it comes to the housing market. And so I mentioned the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act is one example of a policy that's been active in DC and other cities. In California, there's a parallel program, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, right, where strong community-based organizations are able to play that same role. The multifamily affordable building is going to go up for sale. They're able to have the right of first refusal to try and maintain that affordability. That would require a policy change at the local level. I think that I already talked about community land trusts and how the city could donate some of those properties. That would be that would again have to be some persuasion to the city to forego the revenue from the sale of those buildings. But if we have 40,000 city-owned properties, I think there's a worthwhile conversation to be had about what is the appetite to put some of those properties into a community land trust model. And I know the land bank is structured in a way where there's some benefits and set asides for community-based organizations, but I think that the times call for a more robust conversation about how that could be done. Okay,
great. Thank you, James. I see another question here, and maybe Dan Chow, I'm going to present this question to you. So the question is, what's the sentiment around racial equity for the Chinese community? And the reason I'm sharing this question with you, Dan, is because through your news media, your organization has a very, very large following on social media. So maybe you have an understanding of the feelings and sentiment around racial equity. from the native Chinese speaker.
Hey, John. So I think the Chinese community in Philadelphia and also overseas in the last 10 years has really been changing the channel of servicing them has been changing. I think when Metro Chinese Weekly was created in about 13 years ago, that time in Philadelphia we don't have a radio channel, we don't have a TV channel in Chinese that service the local Chinese American communities. So newspaper, weekly newspaper has been the primary platform to service the needs of the Chinese American communities. But however, in the last 4 or 5 years ago, I think WeChat became more and more popular, social media. So even though we have YouTube, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, but most of these channels are not accessible in China. So many of the Chinese that came from mainland China, that if they want to share moments of, for example, their kids playing basketball, so if they post on YouTube, I want my cousin, I want my classmates from high school in China to view it, they're not able to see it. So 4 or 5 years ago, more and more Chinese American shift their social media activities onto WeChat. So we created the WeChat official account called Philly Guide to service the needs, because that's where more and more Chinese American has been using frequently. And I think in the last few years we realized how powerful the channel has been for the Chinese American in the area. So we have, for example, right now, like a Philly Guys, when we post an article, as the headline news on Philly Guys WeChat accounts, we on average right now we able to have from 8,000 to 15,000 unique views. So let's say a community newspaper in Philadelphia, they published 8,000 copies or 10,000 copies, and if this news about PCDC is on page 15, and so out of 10,000 copies on page 15, how many people is actually flip to page 15 and read that article? So that so I think the amount of audience for the traditional publications is become more and more limited, and but on the other side, while the Philly Guide WeChat accounts, for one article we're able to have 8,000 or 10,000 unique views.
So
yeah.
So Dan, I guess So you've grown your audience. Your audience has become more diverse. Before I move on to Mary Yi, so the question I have for you is, on your WeChat channel and among the discussions, is there a difficulty or struggle for native Chinese speakers to understand understand and talk about the concept of racial equity? And then I want to move on to Mary Yi.
You mean our WeChat audience?
On the WeChat discussions, is there discussion about racial equity? Is there a struggle to understand this issue of racial equity in America? Because many of the WeChat participants are immigrants to America.
Right. I think the audience, again, I think the audience of the WeChat channel is as diversified as the publications. But probably at the beginning, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, majority of the WeChat users are from mainland China, and right now I think more and more more and more like Chinese Americans are using WeChat. So I think because of the amount of for example, I mean we have about over 40,000 subscribers of Filicat in Philadelphia. So I think the 40,000 subscribers are very well defined because we only push like local Philadelphia events and where to eat in Philadelphia, where to drink in Philadelphia, where to go on weekend in Philadelphia. So I would say our audience are very well defined as a local active members in the Chinese communities. Okay. So yeah. So I think for whatever topic, I think the audience is there, and in regarding to this particular topic, I think I see today, we have probably 80 to 90 people participating. I know that many of the followers, many of the participants probably from PCDC's, is their own group. So I don't know that how many subscribers from our WeChat channel are participating, because we did include the announcement into the headline article, which right now probably we have about maybe over 8,000 unique views. Yes, that's something you can do a survey later on. Yeah.
Great,
well, I mean, it's wonderful that you've partnered with us to kind of share out this discussion to even thousands of people, greater Philadelphia area, who are part of that WeChat group. I did want to go to James Crowder, who had a comment about, the sort of conversation around racial equity, and especially, between Asian Americans and Black Americans. So, James?
Yes, thank you. I'd put it in the chat just to make sure that I got that there. Yeah, in this moment of visibility around the movement for Black Lives, there is I was really proud or excited to see that AAU is posting so prolifically in support of the movement for Black Lives. I think that shows kind of the solidarity and the importance of kind of joining together, right? There are ultimately what we have in common is that when it comes to the way that we are perceived in society, it kind of holds back our full, our full citizenship, right? And how in this country and how we're able to be active members in society. And so, as I put in the chat, the model minority myth harms the ability for an honest dialogue about the way that low-income Asian Americans, often seniors in Chinatown, are experiencing the threat of displacement and gentrification, because they're dismissed as, if you look at the data without disaggregating it the right way, it could, if you're just looking at the median income, you could easily miss the number of low-income Asian Americans that are suffering. And similarly for Black people, years of anti-Black racism has created an implicit bias that harms, that perpetuated by racial profiling with the police and excessive interactions with the police, but also when it comes to health outcomes. And so the number of Black women that die in childbirth or still in the hospital because their pain is not believed. I believe Serena Williams talked about this, an article about this. And so in both cases, these preconceived notions about who we are as if we're some monolithic group kind of harms the ability for us to really participate and fully in society.
James, thank you. Again, I think there's so much more that we can go deeper into on all these different issues. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I think I'm glad we're touching upon this issue. I want to switch gears for a second. I want to go back to a comment. Mary Yee had made a comment about some tool that can be used for community housing. And Mary Yee, are you on here? Would you like to talk about your idea? Mary, you're on mute.
Yeah. Hi, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry I don't have the detailed information, but one of my former colleagues, Tony Toe, who actually was also a member of Yellow Seeds, was the director of one of the CDCs in Seattle. And I was talking to him at one point, and he was telling me how he had managed to keep control of a good deal of land for moderate income housing there. And he works with a multi-ethnic population, low moderate income. So he said he was able to do, it seems like some kind of maybe limited partnership, a joint venture. So I'm not sure how they obtained the land, whether they got the land for free or it was subsidized or what. But as James has said, the cost of land is a really important issue. So to me, one of the fundamental things is trying to figure out ways to control land in and around Chinatown. Because given that we live in a capitalist society, if we don't have control of land, we are at a disadvantage. So I just want to say that as a tool, for now at least, consideration of maybe some kinds of partnerships that could happen where PCDC would have majority ownership would seem to me something that could be an admirable goal.
Mary Yee, thank you for sharing that concept. I think you are right. We're in a capitalist model here. And in order to get things accomplished, you need to control land. I think that's a very good point. I'd be interested in hearing more about this either from you or Tony To, which I've met a few times, and I think they do some great work out in Seattle.
Yeah, I'd be glad to put you back in touch with him.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. We are pretty much at the hour of closing, 7:55 p.m. This has been a really great conversation. Again, we just touched upon the surface of these issues. I do want to turn it back over to Yue, who started this meeting for us, and have her close out our meeting.
Thank you, our panelists. Do we want to go around, have a final word from everyone?
I will start. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for extending the invitation for me to speak today. I think it was a really good conversation, and look forward to more conversations like this with PCDC and the Chinatown community.
I just want to thank everyone for inviting me. And like John said, it's just like really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's so many things happening in 2020 and so many conversations that we should be having. Definitely, about how COVID-19 is affecting our communities, about how we can be better allies and in the movement for Black lives and also towards racial equity and how we fit into that conversation. This ongoing conversation about equity within development. Like, there's so many things for us to talk about, and we've barely touched any of that today. I mean, there's so many things. There's just so many things for us to talk about. So, thank you for the organizers of this PCDC and all the panelists for being here, and hopefully all of y'all who have showed up tonight will continue to show up and continue to have these discussions with us. And obviously, we are allies.
And,
thank you.
My long-term friend Dan.
Hey, yes. I mean, thanks everybody in the at the PCDC to prepare this wonderful event. And thanks Anna for sending me the list of questions. And I think PCDC and our organization has been long time friends, as me and John as well. Probably know each other for 20 years. So I think during this challenging time of the pandemic, if PCDC need additional assistance in like spreading the word for events, just let us know. We're glad to assist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize that Rebecca Cordes Chan has been here. She is the new executive director for the Rail Park. So for my closing thoughts, I wanted to give her a shout out for hanging in here throughout our 2-hour discussion. Rebecca comes from the social justice space. She, I'm not sure if she worked with my friend Fred Karnas at the Kresge Foundation. Rebecca has a passion for social justice, and we're lucky to have her, listen, get to know our Chinatown neighbors. And, there's a lot of expertise in this Zoom room right now. And I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish by working together. Thank you.
Okay, and so I'll wrap up here, and I just want to also give a shout out to Sarah Young, who was not part of the panel, but did a lot of work on this equity project, and she's here with us tonight. But I'll say that I think you've heard many themes that I'm just going to touch upon, and that is, we all in this Chinatown community have to work together to advance Chinatown socially and economically. Okay, but the reality is that we also have to work with people like Councilman Squilla and the policymakers, because we can work to advance Chinatown, but if we don't work at the policy level, at the government level, the gap between everyone else and the folks in Chinatown is going to be longer and longer. So we need to work both locally and regionally if we are going to advance equity for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we are right at 8, and I will just leave the room open for a few more minutes, and thanks again, and we will keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Yue. Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you, Agnes.